It's the classic debate, Checks versus Stripe, who comes out on top in this super shoe battle. Today we're discussing the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 4 versus the Nike Alphafly 3. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today, like I said, we're reviewing the Adios Pro 4 versus the Alphafly 3, but if it's your first time watching one of my videos, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of the review, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate you come back and watch the full thing when you get a sec, because I put a lot of time and effort into these videos. And if you've been a viewer for a while, please consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video, which is typically Monday through Friday. Now, just to kick us off, some quick disclaimers and disclosures. I actually got both of these shoes with my own money. That being said, I have received shoes from Nike before in the past, but anytime I receive shoes for review, I'm never paid, never obligated to include them in any specific content. I'm not given talk tracks, talking points, and no one watches the videos beforehand. All thoughts are entirely my own. That out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of these two shoes. Now, both of these shoes are marathon specific super shoes. So what that means is they were designed for the marathon, designed to go fast. As such, that's how we're going to be discussing them today. Now, from a price standpoint, what you're looking at is $250 for the Adios Pro 4 and $285 for the Alphafly 3. Obviously, you know, there is some discrepancy here as far as like, is this a premium, like premier level super shoe? The Alphafly 3 is Nike's premium super shoe. You also have the Vaporfly 3 or the Vaporfly 4 now as kind of another second tier super shoe. With Adidas, you do have the $500 Pro Evo line, which is maybe their premium version. And so this would be more comparable potentially to the Vaporfly 4, but Adidas doesn't necessarily differentiate that, so we're going to say that these are pretty much level. But price-wise, $250 to $300, unfortunately, is the norm for super shoes nowadays. Now, moving to specs, these are really, really close with a couple of the specs here. So from a weight perspective, the Adios Pro 4 comes in at 7.1 ounces and 201 grams, and the Alphafly 3 is just slightly lighter at 7 ounces and 198 grams. From a stack standpoint, the Adios Pro 4 is 39 in the heel, 33 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop, and the Alphafly is 40 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. So the Alphafly 3 is a slightly higher drop between the two. From a fit perspective, I would say the Adios Pro 4 fits a little bit short to the point where you could potentially half size up in the shoe if you wanted. I wear my normal 10.5 though, and for the most part, I haven't had really many complaints with it. Now, from a width perspective, I wrote down here that the Pro 4 is a roomy overall toe box, a more standard midfoot and standard heel. Meanwhile, with the Alphafly 3, you have, I would say, true to size length, and so I wouldn't necessarily half up or down in this shoe. I think your regular running shoe size should be fine. Then I would say roomy heel overall, snug to narrow midfoot, and then a standard overall toe box. So between these two, I think that the Alphafly 3 is a little bit more narrow through that midfoot section. I think that neither of them are going to be like the most wide foot friendly, but I do think that wide-footed runners could maybe get away with wearing either of them. Moving to the uppers, two different approaches to an upper, but both fairly breathable. With the Adios Pro 4, you have what's called a microfit upper. It's super, super lightweight. The tongue is going to be that really thin, almost felt material, and it is stitched into the shoe. So even though it's not technically like gusseted, it is stitched into the side of the shoe, so it's not going anywhere, which is actually really, really nice. You have some light cushion there in the heel. Some people have struggles with heel rubbing with these kind of pull tabs and whatnot, but for me, no issues whatsoever. I haven't had to wear any like blister resist socks or anything like that. And then you have just kind of, you know, a standard overall lacing system and then some overlays there to give support, but a pretty like flexible, minimal heel collar there. On the Alphafly 3, I would say it is slightly more breathable than the Adios Pro 4. You have the Atom Nip upper, which is kind of this sock knit material. It's only really stretchy there in the tongue area and the heel, but the rest of it is actually like you'd think it was really, really stretchy, but it's actually pretty rigid is not the word, but it stays put, let's say it that way. You have, same thing, some light cushion there in the heel area. You have a slightly more structured heel counter, but still pretty flexible, at least there in the top. And I would say that, you know, the only real stretch is going to be there in the tongue. Between the two of them, I feel like I get better overall lockdown in the Adios Pro 4. I feel like the fit is more standard throughout. With the stretch tongue of the Alphafly, while you do get good, like because it's a fairly narrow midfoot, you do get good lockdown in the Alphafly. Sometimes you feel a little bit more lace pressure because of that knit kind of tongue or sewn in booty tongue, right? I'm not necessarily shifting around a ton in the upper of the Alphafly, but I do feel like, again, I'm just more locked in place in the Adios Pro 4. Now, between the two toe boxes, though, I do feel like you get a little bit more breathability and room in the Alphafly 3, despite having maybe less room there in the midfoot area. Neither of them did I have to use the runner's knot for what it's worth. Moving to the midsoles, you have a Lightstrike Pro midsole in the Adios Pro 4, which is a supercritical TPEE. And then on the Alphafly 3, you have the Zoom X foam with a Zoom Air unit in the forefoot, as well as a carbon fiber plate that runs through the shoe. You actually have carbon fiber infused energy rods, which match kind of the orientation of your toes and your feet that run through the shoe. So it's not a plate, it's actually 5 different rods. Now, as far as the two foams go, the Adios Pro 4 is much softer and squishier. Just standing in the shoe really compresses underfoot. You know, standing in it, you may think like you're going to roll an ankle, and as such, it like compresses quite a bit. It's very squishy overall. Now, the foam, though, these supercritical TPEEs, they do firm up the more force you put into them, like non-Newtonian fluids. So, you know, if you've ever like played with like oobleck, if you hit it, it feels like it's hard, right? Like the more force you put into it, the more resistance you get. The same is true with these supercritical TPEEs, to the where the faster that you run, the more force you're putting in the shoe, the more it will firm up and the more return you're going to get. Meanwhile, on the Alphafly 3, this Zoom X foam, you can compress it, but I feel like it's not mushy or squishy, especially with the compressed air, or especially with the Zoom Air units there in the forefoot. I would say like the overall sensations underfoot between the two is that the Adios Pro 4 is going to be more of a smooth and snap, versus the Alphafly 3 is going to be more of a punch and explosion off of the ground, right? I sound super loud running in the Alphafly 3, both because the Zoom X foam kind of squeaks, but also you almost get like a clop there when you hit that forefoot area and then it pops off the ground, right? Neither of them are inherently stable. For me, I like the slightly lower drop. It maybe feels a little bit less aggressive to me. I feel like the Adios Pro 4 is going to be a little bit more accommodating depending on pace, but I really do think this comes down to preference and your stride. The Alphafly 3, full transparency, doesn't work for me because the higher drop, plus that, like, however it explodes off the ground, just something about the geometry of the shoe gives me calf cramps, right? Running fast in the Alphafly 3 makes it's a very aggressive feeling shoe, versus the Adios Pro 4 is a little bit more of a smooth shoe to me. So when it comes to just that sensation, again, more of a pop off the ground, more of an explosion versus more of that snap and smoothness, right? It'll come down to the type of experience you're looking for underfoot, right? Again, softer overall underfoot, a little bit firmer, but not firm. And overall, like stability wise, just at a standstill, I think that the Alphafly 3 is probably a little bit more stable, but again, depends on your preferences. Moving to the outsoles, on the Adios Pro 4, you have the GCPU compound as well as some areas of Continental rubber. Overall, I felt like the outsole did a really good job on the Adios Pro 4. You can actually see there's still some mud caked into the outsole of the shoe because I did run on some mud and ran in plenty of rain, some snow, had no issues whatsoever with the grip. The Alphafly 3, you have the Fast Shot outsole, and you know, for the most part, this grippy kind of waffle-ish pattern here, like these black areas, they did a good job for me, but sometimes I felt like these orange pads underneath the Zoom Air, they did slip a little bit for the most part. But so like between the two grips, I actually prefer the Adios Pro 4 grip. I'll be curious to see if they change up the grip pattern overall. I know that they used a blown rubber in the Vaporfly 4. We may see a blown rubber on the Alphafly 4 whenever that releases. Looking at the outsoles though, I do find that, you know, I think that you're going to get better durability overall on the Adios Pro 4 just because of the coverage. You can see the exposed foam there on the Alphafly 3 because it's been exposed to snow and moisture and different things. It is starting to just wear quite a bit. Not to the extent that the Vaporfly 3 just ate away at the heels, but I do think you're going to get a little bit more wear and tear on the shoe. Now, some people on the Adios Pro 4 have gotten wear and tear kind of there on that lateral forefoot or lateral toe area. Mine 40 miles in look totally fine. I haven't had any issues whatsoever. So I'm not really concerned about either outsole for the most part. I think they do a good job. As far as my pick between the two, you know, we already talked about this, but the Alphafly 3 just gives me calf cramps. I want to be able to run more in the shoe. I want to be fast in the shoe. It just doesn't really match my stride because it's just a really aggressive toe off, and that those Zoom Air units, you just kind of explode off the ground. And I find that I actually expend more energy in the Alphafly 3 than I would in the Adios Pro 4. Now the Adios Pro 4, it seems a little bit more pace versatile to me. It is a little bit less stable, I think, on the run, but overall, I think the experience in the shoe just matches my stride a little bit more. It's a little bit more smooth. I feel like I'm getting a little bit more energy return, but it's not in such an aggressive manner. And so for me, I lean towards the Adios Pro 4. However, the Alphafly 3 is super, super popular. You'll see it on plenty of feet at so many races. So many people absolutely love the shoe. Some people call it like the king of the super shoes, right? So I don't think you can go wrong with either, but I do think that if you are someone who is not used to higher drop shoes and you like more of that moderate, like 5 to 8 millimeter drop, I understand this is an 8, but it feels higher to me. But that's where I would probably lean towards the Adios Pro 4, because that's kind of where I'm at there. Just some final thoughts. Both of these shoes, really, really good, right? Premium super shoe options. Both of them are going to be great options to choose, but very, very different in execution. If you can, I would highly recommend anytime you're buying race shoes that you go in store, you try them on. If they have a treadmill, you run on it, find which one works with your stride, and ask about return policies, because for me, I always like to do at least one long run and one speed workout in a race shoe before I officially race in it, just to make sure that it's going to work with my stride. Remember that shoes come down to preference and your individual body, stride, paces, etc. So if you watched this far, I sure appreciate you. Please take a second, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what questions you have about the shoes and what I could be doing better in these videos to make them even more entertaining for each and every one of you. And if you watched this far and you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please consider doing so today and turning on those notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video. And with that, we'll leave you with a question, which is, what is your king of the super shoes? Or better put, what's your favorite super shoe ever? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everybody.